So how close to the top end of what you imagined did you either get close to it, exceed it? Where did the game end up falling?
It's like 110,000 copies.
Have you thought through what a random, month, 7 or 8 months down the road might look like? And have you created a sort of passive income?
On that number I just said, 500,000, we're actually pretty close to it already.
What's the secret sauce?
I'm not a real game dev. And I don't care.
Welcome to the Dev Dream Podcast, featuring conversations to keep both you and me inspired on our journey of making games. Today, I brought back Cory Darby to interview after he just released with his partner Andy a game about feeding a black hole. Now, if you missed the first conversation, he had some ideas the game might perform well, and boy did it. They have just surpassed 100,000 copies and are quickly approaching $500,000 in gross revenue. Now that's very impressive considering they had a very short dev cycle for this game and focused on minimalizing the effort that it would take to create a successful commercial game. But today I wanted this conversation to be highly impactful to you, and so we really did a deep dive on how they were able to accomplish this. I'm really excited to share this conversation, and if you enjoy it, you can hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, you can hit the like button. Here we go.
So how close to the top end of what you imagined did you either get close to it, exceed it? Where did the game end up falling for you?
I was very happy, actually, that I came on before and gave a range because I actually used it to go back and look. That was like October. I think the podcast was posted October 20th, and it was a little bit before that we actually met. And like the first 5 seconds of the video editing, you're like, yeah, the insane number is like 20 to 30,000 in the first 72 hours. And I looked back and like on release date, December 15th, I had put that at something like a 10% chance. But actually it was beyond that. It was like 40,000 copies in the first 72 hours. So that was quite a bit of a shocker. 20 to 30,000 was already going to be a shocker. Like I said, even at launch day, I was like, there's a 10% chance. It was more realistic. It was going to be that number over the week. So logging in and seeing like, we were like 3 hours in and already 4,000 copies and 2,000 people in the game was like, uh-oh in a good way. Like
Right.
This is going to be different.
Exciting.
This is not what I expected. So, yeah.
And how many copies have you sold to date?
So it's like 110,000 copies, which is
That's
kind
amazing.
of insane when you think about it.
Yeah.
And it still goes strong. It's, 2,000 copies a day still. I think I looked, it was like we're 24 days from release. So, some quick math, it means every day since release, we're on average selling like 5,000 almost copies, which is just like kind of crazy. I remember it was something like the first 72 hours, for context, Aramis, who did the game with me, whose name is Andy, all of Andy's 2 other games combined lifetime sales, revenue and units, we beat it in the first 72 hours of just this game. And one of those games had been out for 3 years. So just for context for people to think through, it's like, yeah, this was not expected. This was way more than we thought. This was well beyond the expectation of what we originally were hoping for. So,
well, congratulations. It's a huge achievement. And it's also very inspirational, I think, for a lot of small indie devs, small teams, and just what you can do with a small game. I was looking back at some of Aramis's old content to see when he started talking about this game. And I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you know, but he only worked on this game maybe 6 or 8 months, or it was under a year, right? And then you came on a little bit later in development, and then you guys kind of finished it up. Is that correct?
I think Andy had maybe something between 50, 80 hours before I came on. I know right around the end of July is when we both started working on this. And maybe it was like a week-ish after that. He was somewhere around about 100 hours. And then like he had his time, but then we stopped because the only time that mattered was like, are we hit Next Fest or not? It doesn't matter how much time we're tracking at this point. Like, we have committed to that, so that's the only time and date, like, are we going to make it or not, that mattered. But to date, like, I'm pretty sure we land somewhere between this like low end 750, 800 hours to 1,000 hours on the high end combined between both of us since essentially August 1st, we'll say. So it was a relatively small game, extremely small compared to the outcome of what it produced. But yeah.
Yeah, jumping back to the sales data, I think about the big spike that you hear about people getting on launch day or maybe day 2 or 3. But now you have such a good long tail going. Do you know which day you had the most? And because I'm just curious, with a game that has such good momentum, did you have a big spike and then now 2,000 a day or whatever you mentioned has gone down, or has it kind of plateaued, or what's that look like if you know?
Yeah, well, I was just going to quickly pull it up, but so the release date was the most sales. It actually came in at 16,000 units sold in that one day.
Okay.
And then, like I said, now we're somewhere between 2,000 to 1,500 copies every day moving. And that will drop. Like, actually, it dropped quite substantial when the discount stopped. Discount's 14 days. Once that dropped, we went from like I don't know, like doing 3,000, 3,500 down to like 1,500 to 2,000 range. They're pretty much halved once the discount expired. And then Steam will give us the 30-day visibility, where you'll just get a bunch of like more A/B testing on like what it's trying to figure out who is the audience and how much, and the more traffic you give it, the more it's going to push towards you. And that's another, I guess, 5-6 days to go. So I would expect like another dip of 30 to 50% of sales to drop off. Not always, though. I saw this with Click and Conquer. It can take even longer. It just depends on like when the next discount is, how many bundles are selling, how many bundles we have going forward, how many other games are launching that have those bundles, because those can prop up your sales as well. But yeah, the long tail is, regardless, like the long tail could go to 0 tomorrow, and the game is beyond our dreams. It's very successful. Andy's in a very great spot. I'm in a very great spot. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Something interesting that I just had a conversation with another developer. Interview hasn't come out yet, but he had his oldest game. He had built up a nice catalog of back games that he'd created, and his oldest game, which was like 3 years old, made like $1,400 in the last month. And now that was December, so it was a little bit of a high month. But have you thought through, what's your experience with Click and Conquer, what a random, month, 7 or 8 months down the road might look like? And have you created a sort of passive income or something that could be built up in a back catalog like that for maybe you and Andy or other developers if they want to try this kind of strategy?
Yeah. I did a Reddit post about, okay, game hit 100,000 copies. This was actually one of the questions that came up in the Reddit post, was like, okay, so what do you think you're going to make in a year? There's an article. It's something like predicting Steam long tail, or something like Steam revenue long tail, and how much you're going to make. But someone's done the number crunching, and they basically say, okay, the median is 3x whatever you make in your first week. And the range they give for all the games they surveyed is 2x to 4.5x and of the first week of sales. So then I pull it up and it's like, okay, what does the first week look like? Well, the first week is $250,000. So that would put the game at somewhere between 500,000 to 1.1 million in the first 12 months, which is insane to say. Like, we're at a whole other unit. We're not even in thousands. We're in millions. And then after that really depends. Like 2-3 years out, like if I look at Chess Survivor as an example, pretty much as the first year, the second year does 30% of the first year. The third year is going to do, 30-50% of your second year. So even then, you can have quite a long ways to go with the game. And then obviously you can revamp, you could do DLC, you could add new content to the game and trying to push it that way. But yeah, we'll see what the numbers end up. But on that number I just said, 500,000, we're actually pretty close to it already. Like the game right now is at like 440,000. So I'm pretty confident we're not going to be on the lower end of that range because the game's not even on discount right now. That's the other silly thing to me, is it's selling very well even though there's no discount on the game. So
yeah, that's incredible. Have you guys considered what it might look like to support this game long term with it being so successful? Are you considering or have decided to invest more time in upkeep and trying to keep that long tail very strong?
There's multiple different like perspectives, I guess. It's like we went pretty ham after release to add a bunch of stuff. We were still going right up till like December 23rd it was, or 24th. Even though me and Andy agreed that we would stop like December 21st for the holidays, it was like, no, we gotta keep adding stuff, and we want Steam Deck Verify, let's keep going. So we finally stopped, and then I don't know, it was December 24th to January 4th, something like that. We pretty much both went on vacation, so we added more content. We plan to add more content. I know there's like a roguelite mode in the game on a beta branch right now that Andy's testing with other players and getting feedback. We will finalize that and add that into the game probably for like the next discount. So I guess in 15, 17 days, 30 days from whenever our prior discount ended. And we'll run what's called a visibility round on Steam. So anyone who has the game wishlisted is more likely to see it. But after that, we'll really see. There's not like quite honestly, from business stance, there's not really a reason to keep adding to the game, aside from keeping like the purchasers happy who bought the game. But you add more and like there's no more levers. All we could do is go to content creators and say like, oh, we've added so much that you should cover the game again. Very unlikely. Or a bunch of harder, more friction to get them to do it, to review the game again. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious. What is your gut instinct? This is not something quantifiable, but from the time you hit release, let's say, imagine a world where you just left it. You did nothing. Didn't even do maybe some, if there was major bugs or something, sure, discount for that. But you didn't add any content. What do you think the delta or, the change of sales would be if you did that versus what you did do? Do you think you guys might have increased sales by 1% or 20%? Or is this more of just a pure satisfaction play like you were mentioning? Do you think does your gut tell you that there's any value to adding content to a game like this, like you guys did in this scenario?
I think we stabilized the refunds at the 4% it is right now, and that is likely where it will, maybe another 0.4% movement somewhere. There were some complaints about the game being too linear, so I had watched enough content creators to see where they kind of felt friction and where people were kind of dwindling on the gameplay. So I went in and revamped some of the skill tree. That helped a lot on some of the reviews. Playtime also bumped up. Like I think when we first launched the game, median playtime was like 2 hours and 25 minutes. It's up to almost 3 hours now. We did add more modes for that, so that helped. I think it really just protects on the refund side, quite honestly, and it mostly kept us in the range of that 4%. I don't think it would have been astronomical, like, it's not going to 10% if we didn't add this. I think it's the difference of like 4 to 6%. So, okay, cool. We save 2% less refunds. For most games, that's not really important. But when we're doing hundreds of thousands of units, okay, it's 2,000 copies right there. So,
yeah, that's amazing. Now, I was going back through some old interviews, and you mentioned that you're now, or this was pretty recent with Aramis, actually. I watched your guys' Scope Creepers, kind of like Q&A, where you sort of interviewed each other and took questions as well. And you mentioned you're 3 for 3 on successful releases. And I actually don't know about that first game. So what was the first game before Click and Conquer?
It was actually after Click and Conquer.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
There was a game called Mr. Farm Boy that I had just spent I think 900 hours with the creator of that game. We met each other on Twitch. I just kept chatting, and then it was like getting involved on like, oh, you should redesign the UI, you should do this, oh, you should do that, oh, this is how you should market a game. And then when I did Click and Conquer, I was like, okay, this is literally how we did that game. This is exactly how you should market that game. And then it was like, here's the doc I wrote for you to follow pricing, like literally go in Steam and set your pricing exactly as this. It's based off of what we did with Click and Conquer. And that was actually a farming, I call it farming automation, very light on the automation aspect. We're not talking about Factorio with like fully automatable. It's more worker automation. You start doing everything yourself, then you hire workers. You slowly start doing less yourself, and the workers are doing the work for you. And that was a subjectively modest success. It sold more than 1,000 copies in their first day. So it ended up on Pauper Up and Coming when it was launching, but it was nothing compared to Gamedev Feeding the Black Hole. That's just a whole other level. Yeah, like even Click and Conquer, which I considered quite a success, given 3,000 wish list. There's a 6-7 month difference of time there between Gamedev Feeding the Hole and where Click and Conquer's launched since then, and Gamedev Feeding the Black Hole is like 3 times revenue, more than 2 times the copy sold, and we're not even at the first month. So it's just wild is the word I guess I should use.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly magnitudes to success, and a game not being as big as a game about beating a black hole doesn't make it not a success. And so
No.
I think it's fair to call all 3 of those games successful, and many devs out there would love to hit 1,000 in their first year, 1,000 copies. I mean, that would be a huge success. Now I'm curious, why do you think you've been 3 for 3 whenever I could go and find 1,000 devlogs about failed games that people spent probably more time on than many of the games you worked on? What's the secret sauce? What are the things? What are the things as you think through? You mentioned you watch a bunch of game dev content and like advice and stuff. Or is there anything that you notice that you think differently about, or maybe just your approach in general? We talked a lot about min-maxing last time. Why are you able to be so successful so consistently? And permission to not hold back and, do a little humble brag or really, I won't receive it as hubris. I'm genuinely curious what you think here.
I don't think I talked to Andy actually about maybe last week about this, and there were a handful of things, but one major point was it cracked me up that someone was like, this guy just sent emails, you're not a real game dev, which was not even the whole extent of the things being done. But, I actually laughed because I said, yeah, exactly. I'm not a real game dev, and I don't care. Like, the biggest thing is I don't get caught up in the identity. It's like design, code, art, all this is just a tool for the outcome that I want to do. And I think that really helps in not associating yourself with the game. Like, there's so many things that me and Andy just scrapped. And I think a lot of devs get caught up with their identity to the thing they made. And it's like, yeah, but I need that mechanic to work. I put so much time into it. It's the good one. It's like, you'll have plenty of more better ideas. You like, if it's just not jamming with the vibe of the game, just, back burner or scrap it all together. I think for those who don't know, we scrapped 12 mechanics from the original game. Like core, is it you're controlling the black hole? Is the black hole eating things? Is there spawners that are, pushing out resources? Is there more than one resource? Is it a clicker, like truly a clicker game where you're clicking? We had the black hole shooting stuff. We had it where you were shooting things. All scrapped. we didn't fall in love with it. I'm, very proud is not the right word, but I am very happy working with Andy on his willingness of just, let's just test. And I'm very A/B thing. A/B person. So it's like, okay, well, we know what it feels like here. Let's try a little bit something else. And our worst case, we know what it is. We go back to the other thing. And so be it. I think that helps a lot.
Now,
Just spending time with the community.
If you think about your experience also with the other two games, did that also line up? Did you have a similar, like, especially you coming in alongside developers, are you able to kind of offer that just like, here's an A/B test, like, let's compare these mechanics, let's cut mechanics. Is that a similar experience, you think, with those other two games?
I think Stefan with Click and Conquer, we were so pressed for time, and he had just come off a Barricade being a total flop that it was yellow. We didn't even care. Which is, I don't think he should talk for himself. Maybe he'll come in the comments and say it, but I don't think that's his natural instinct. But given it was just like so freeing, not caring, and it was just like, we're shipping a game in 300 hours. We don't care. Like, whatever, like, just throw the mechanic, whatever, test that, like, just whatever works. So he was able to get out of his way with that, because me and him are working on another game called Mining the Dwarfs, and we find ourselves getting more in our way and more not like Click and Conquer, and it's more strategic. Should it be that? Should it not be that? And then Mr. Farm Boy was a bigger challenge because that game started off being called Cute Fantasy RPG Game, which doesn't have really anything to do with farming, and has literally the word RPG in the game title, and now the current game has no RPG mechanic. And that was a very long process of just spending time with that creator, whose handle is Mr. D-Boy, going back and forth and be like, well, who are you making the game for? And is this really working? And why are you doing it this way? So everyone has their own process. I think working with 3 different people now and having other people who wanted to work with me and actually even turning them down, the biggest thing is like, how shapeable and moldable are they in the idea? And if it's, I'm building X game, I have had somebody literally tell me, I am building X game, and I'm like, yep, good luck. Like, I don't think this is going to work. I can't help you. Wish you all the best. I hope the game is successful, but I just think that those games are really likely to fail. They're either really good or they're really bad, and I'm such a de-risker that I'm like, they're likely to be bad because they're not going to be willing to pivot, and they're not willing to experiment, and then they're going to tie themselves up into the work that they do, and then they're going to be scared to press the delete key on the keyboard. So
yeah, I was thinking of something as you were speaking about this, and it kind of like, I feel like especially in game dev YouTube community, there's maybe this sort of like vague like avatar of what a real dev is. And it's like, maybe like 100% like artist. Like, you can't want to make money. You can't do things strategically. Like, I'm being obviously very extreme, but something in that realm of like, the art is only real and genuine if you're not strategic at all. And so I wonder if maybe you were bumping up against that kind of identity with those people that are like, this is my game. I'm not going to think strategically about it, and I'm just going to do it the art way. Because then I'll be a real developer, maybe.
Yep, that is definitely a factor. Other factor I think that's tied is like, people don't want other people involved in what they do. It's like, I'm solo doing this. This is my way. This is how it's going to be. I mean, I even had somebody who came close to me and them collaborating, and one of the sticking points was, wait, but I could just spend all the time and do what you say you're going to do. I'm like, exactly, 100%. I'm like, but you're going to double your time budget, which is going to increase the risk of your project. And the other thing is, it was like, who cares? Like, well, what is the ideal outcome? Okay, game makes said money. And Thorny is going to take some cut of it. And okay, you still make a lot of money, and I made money too. We both win. There's no like I only made all the money. Like it's like actually de-risk the project because your time's gonna be cut in half. Which means if it doesn't work out, I take all the time downside. You don't really lose much because the game's a flop, and you just move on to the next game sooner. And people are very, very resistant to anything like this. Yeah.
That's very interesting. And something I think also that people need to consider when considering adding people, Jonas Tyroller talked about one time is like, say you add one person, yeah, you're cutting your revenue in half in this imaginary 50-50 split, but you also have to consider that you're not just 2xing your game, because you're also, no matter who you work with, you're going to add other ideas and skills that you don't have. I mean, if you literally find someone with the exact same skill set, sure. But if you're adding someone with any other skills, you're not just multiplying that by 2 and dividing by 2, you're multiplying by 3 or 4 and then dividing by 2. So you still come out ahead. Obviously, you could flop and it's not a guarantee, but just like in your imagining, the game won't be the same if you work with somebody. In the ideal world, if it's a good partnership, the game will be better by working with someone. Therefore, what you get will be better probably than what you can make alone. So back to the idea, though, of this 3 for 3 idea. Do you feel like you now have a playbook that you can reference? Or as you mentioned, working with 3 different developers, is it more still of just like a case by case and game by game basis, do you feel like?
I bet more on the people than the gamer idea. Absolutely. This is for sure a thing I'm coming to realize. Pretty much anybody who's asked to work with me, it has nothing to do with the game. Outside of like some small edge cases where I'm like, I either don't understand the game, I don't understand how we can make the game fun. I feel like Steam users wouldn't buy that type of game. But for 99% of people coming, they're like, here's my idea. I'm like, no, I don't care about the idea. We can shape the idea to whatever we want. I think we can make money basically with any idea tweaked the right way. It's like, who are you? How do you work? How do I work? Can we work together? We're lines in the sand. Like the playbook really comes down to, I think it's repeal. I am going to have a flop. I know this, but the playbook banks on this. Like originally, all the way back in Click Conquer, it assumed some factor of games are going to flop. And actually, really, honestly, it was 1 in 10 of the games is like game of a black hole. And like 2 out of 10 are like slight profit. And I think we said 2 out of 10 are like barely break even. And the other, like, whatever that is, 5 or 6 were like straight losses. We didn't assume any revenue, just like Zippo. 0, we lost $100 Steam. So it's not flawless. I just really think if you're open to change and you don't come in with like, I'm just building this game, this is the way it is, I think you can do pretty well. Like I know I can do pretty well. There's plenty of games I see in the last 20 some days after Game of a Black Hole came out. I'm like, I'm pretty confident I can make this a really good game, or make more, I should say, just money from this game. And looking at some games, I look and I'm like, you're heading down a path of just like, I don't think this game's going to do well. We'll see. Like I keep tabs on some of these games to look back. Some of them have definitely been bullets I've dodged where it was like, yep, I was right. And there are so far not been any super shockers. It's like, okay, the game did slightly better than I thought it would have, but there's no secret. Like, there's really no secret. There's no like, oh, I got the secret formula, I put in the Excel sheet and out comes whatever. It's mostly just a people soft skill thing, which I hate saying because it feels hand wavy.
Yeah, it's a vibe check.
So far, it's worked. I mean, it's going to be wrong at some point, but
yeah. When you talk about working with these people, oh man, I just had a question. Oh, sorry. To your point about these games, I had two ideas that I kind of decided to branch between. But you talk about these games that you see that you passed on them to work with them, and you had maybe an intuition that they would not go well. And I'm not asking you to like drop a name of one of these games, but do you have
Sure.
a nugget of, if you could reflect, what was it that you saw in the game that you didn't like the direction of, that proved to not do well? Was it just the rigidity of change of the developer, or were there actual, tangible things that maybe someone listening could reflect on if they're doing that?
Rigid was one. Time was another. To be quite honestly, I probably overcommitted, and there was some that I said, okay, I think we could do this, and then I looked at like schedule with Game of Black Hole and still doing our game with Stefan on the side, and realized like I'm overcommitted, and how that got handled was in some circumstances was like, I don't understand. It's just you're just doing X. Why can't you do it? Like there's limited amount of time. I don't very tangible things that people could do, eh?
It's okay if not. Yeah,
Think
if it's
so.
really just an openness to adapting your game as you go through testing and get feedback, that alone is really, I think, valuable advice for people to question on themselves.
I think it might be. I have a hard time because the way that I have been working with people now and look for the people I'm willing to work with is like, we don't come to the table with like X game. We're kind of with more like what's going well on Steam, where can we position ourselves, what's our skill set, what kind of assets can we either build or get that would match that game, what kind of content creators would cover that game, are there enough to even sustain it to get the game where we need it to. Like, I think I'm in the camp of like, if you can't find me 100 content creators that get 5K views on consistent videos for whatever the genre is, I ain't doing it. It's just not enough. Yeah. So if it's like X genre and you're like, you can't find me serious content creators of like 5K VODs across 100 of them, and easy, I don't mean you spend like days finding obscure people that one time covered like a roguelike deck builder and you're like, oh, that person counts. I mean, they should come up right away on the search. Then I just avoid it. I'm looking for I call it the lazy, easy path of working with Steam and not against Steam. And as we've talked about in the last time you had me on the podcast, I really don't care what that is. And I'm looking for other people who maybe don't fully say the same thing as me, as they don't care at all, but they're moldable to like options there. It's like, we could do this one or this one or this one, but I ain't branching out onto this other side where it makes no sense with the Steam audience and whatever. Like, I don't care if you want to make that, just no. So
yeah, it's funny. It reminds me of this like wisdom my dad used to tell me. My dad used to work in construction essentially, and he would say the laziest worker can find you the most efficient way to do something. And lazy is not exactly the right word, but I do think finding like the path of least resistance, and I think this ties in with that element of like the artist avatar. Like I hear what you're saying is you want people that are able to step back from that, start with the customer, start with Steam, start with marketing, start somewhere else than just like, oh, I have this world that I built up in my head that I want to create. And that's cool. Like there's nothing wrong with that kind of game dev. But, like we've talked about in our other conversation, if you want to succeed in a business sense, you can't start there. Or at least that's the most difficult way to start, at least. Not that you can't. Maybe that was Stardew Valley. There are games that succeed. But if you want to increase your odds of being successful, you need to start like you're saying. Now, I want to shift the conversation a little bit. Unless you had a follow-up point there, go ahead. I just want to go back to jumping back into a game about beating a black hole a little bit more specifically. This is your second incremental game. Like a Conquer was also incremental. And so I'm just wondering if you think doing two of these games is incremental genre, is that kind of like developing on easy mode, or what how have you experienced that? And what's that like for you?
I guess the answer I should give is I think it's easy mode for me. But equally, I have seen people say incremental easy mode and then come back in a Discord and been like, wow, it's actually really hard to make those types of games. Or at least for them.
Right.
And I think a lot of people see that because of the low amount of time. And they immediately think, okay, this is going to be strictly super easy. It's just a different skill set. So if you come from X genre, you come into this genre, you think it's going to be easy. It's just whatever time you're going to struggle. Just like I think I would if I went to like Friend Slop and like as an outsider, I think, oh, look how exploding those games are. It's just multiplayer with some funny push forward concept. Obviously, I would probably have the same struggles as them. I think the big thing about incremental games is, quite honestly, they have a really good community right now. I am in a Discord with other incremental devs. I think there's maybe at least over 30 of us at this point in that Discord. And they're all the typical names you would expect if you play the incremental games or research incremental games. They're almost all there. We're all there. So that helps with like ideas. That helps with like, what did you do for your capsule? Who did you use for your capsule? What did you do on a Steam sale? Did you see an uptick with X? Who did you bundle with? Oh, you know that person to bundle. Like this all really helps. But probably helps more for established games. People who are either doing their next game as incremental or they already have an incremental game and they're trying to squeeze every amount out of it. For newcomers, I don't think if I dropped them in the Discord, they would be at some like secret advantage, aside from having devs to talk to.
Sure.
But easy mode, there are some cons to it. Lower price point. So the lower price point means you're going to have to move a lot of volume. And I do think there's an upper cap to the games in the incremental space, exactly how much you can fully sell. I don't know exactly what the number is, but if you look, like the highest incremental game, I think is capped at like 6, aside from Cookie Clicker, 6,000 reviews. I think that might be Tower Wizard. And the other thing is the pricing. So it's like you're moving a lot of volume at a low amount. And it's harder to stay on things like the popular, new, and trending because that's all based off of gross revenue. So, maybe a game that's priced at $20 but is moving half of the volume. Yeah, but you're 5 times the price or more sometimes for these incremental games. So, pros and cons. I don't think everyone should go into incremental. I'm not saying that because I'm in there and I think it's going to be saturated. I think I'm in the middle of doing another incremental game with Andy right now. Like, and me and Stefan have a game to launch in February. That's also incremental. Both of these are incremental games.
Why do you think incremental games are easier for you? Is it that you got a little bit lucky and that Click and Conquer went well, or you have a certain sort of analytical take that is good for that genre? Or do you just play a lot? What do you think leads to it being a good genre for you to develop?
I think your player base is more casual, more laid back. They're less serious. I don't think they're like 4Xers come in here all serious mode, like, okay, time to plop down for 10 hours straight and plan out my next strategy session of what my city is going to look like or revamp the whole city. It's usually like open up the game. You're play the session or you're going to complete the game and you're like, cool, I'm done, move on. Right now the incremental genre doesn't have a ton of replayability on any of those games. It's kind of like once you're done, you're done. So I find this easier on maybe the patience of the player or what the player is expecting, and then how quickly you can dive them into like the core game. I like, so it's like end to end. For a game of Feeding Black Hole as the example, or even Click and Conquer, the entire loop in less than 5-6 minutes. And both games have no tutorial. That was another nice thing. There's no super UI, which also is a ton of time to nail down a good UI. There's no complex mechanics that you are like, okay, how do I place and rotate this the certain way to do the certain thing? So I have to prompt you with a tooltip because there's no purely native, like intuitive way. You just have to be told. And once you know, but this is like you hover or use left click. And simplifies. For me, it just simplifies a lot of the interactions.
Yeah, I love that simplicity. You brought up replayability, and I was curious if you viewed that as a weakness, and then also in Black Hole, in adding some of these game modes, have you noticed any uptick in maybe hours or replayability as much as you can track compared to, I don't know if Click and Conquer had any similar added game modes or something that would elevate that to help you keep a little bit more replayability or not?
So medium playtime did go up when we added the more modes. So they were willing to come back and play more. I know there are some players who do replay the game just for the sake of like feeding the black hole, and they just like to see the stuff on the screen get destroyed. But I don't think really people are resetting and going back and replaying like the core base game from start to finish. Or a very small minority, to be quite honest. I'd have to look at like what the playtime is on the extreme buckets. I know there's a small percent that is 10 plus hours, but then it's like, well, maybe they forgot to close it, so
Yes.
that could be skewed.
Yeah.
It is a weakness. I mean, me and Andy did want to actually try and address it with feeding the black hole, but we kind of ran out of time to take that on. We're playing around with the roguelike mode on the beta branch to allow people to have different runs and try and get different builds and things like this. But I actually think we won't be able to truly achieve that for how much we want to commit our time. It will be a game mode, but it won't be the game. I think there is a game that is a roguelike game that has a lot of incremental styles or choices or game mechanics in it, and that is a separate game. And what we are simply doing is wrapping a very thin piece of a roguelike experience in an incremental game of giving you random choice, and we're saying that's an incremental game mode so that you could play this RNG incremental basically mode. The players in the beta seem to enjoy that, but I think they'll get tired of it after a couple playthroughs, and they'll move on.
Yeah, maybe you're not developing the same kind of maximum hours as a Balatro or something to that level. But it is interesting to think about what the upper bound might be for a game that's just adding those roguelike elements. Back to the genre conversation, one more question there. Do you feel like in the way that you approach game dev that you're limited to maybe a select few genres? I mean, all small devs are probably not going to make an MMO. But you think in a broader sense that you have maybe more genres than the average developer that you wouldn't touch, or are you more pretty open to whatever it might be depending on the developer?
Personally, the reason why I haven't explored the other ones with anyone is we're just in a ramp up growth stage. Like if you said we were building a business, I'd say, okay, we want to capitalize the business enough that we could take some bets and not fully be back down to zero and scrambling or making bad choices when we take those bets. If Stefan and Andy and I got together and said we're doing a friend swap, and it's going to take us a year and a half because none of us have done multiplayer 3D world, and we're in a different genre, and there's going to be a ton of new stuff, and okay, we don't want to all burn our runway and then get close to like that point where we're out of money, and then we start making really bad decisions because we need to release the game to figure out whether or not this is going to be a good enough bet or not. And right now it's like, okay, let's build the coffers, which might be hard for people here. I know we started the podcast with like, oh, game could do $1 million, but for context, like Steam cut,
Yeah.
I take a cut, Andy takes a cut, the IRS takes a cut, like CRA for me takes a cut, like, and then that has to cover development too. Like people, like we spent 6 months. Okay,
Right.
so you recouped your 6 months. But if you want to do another game like Game of Feeding Black Hole, it's 6 months of development that you also pay, and that assumes there's no flop. If that's a flop, you need another 6 months. So really, to be sustainable in this, it's like your game needs to ROI out 18 months of runway If your game only took 6 months, so 3x whatever your game took. So your game takes 1 year, your game needs to pay for 3 years. So from at least in my financial safety, it would be 3 years of runway. In 6 months development, it's 18 months. So I would like to do rogue deck builder game, friend swap games. We talked about simulation games. These are all genres that we're definitely interested in. We see other things and they're within our capabilities. But there are some genres that I'm just like, no, like I don't want to do a puzzle game ever, probably. I don't want to do games that have no meta progression at all, probably. It just becomes incredibly hard to keep the player entertained and not feel like a grind. I'm not going to do an MMO, even if we have the budget. I don't want to face the chicken egg. How do you get the players? The game's only popular if you have the players. Anything with a chicken egg where you end that cycle, nope. So if it's like a mass multiplayer network that's required, MMO, but anything that's like this, a competitive scene at all, like a League of Legends, nope. Like,
yeah, that makes sense. And I think your little math there of trying to recoup 3x the time that a game puts in, that's the first time I've heard that, or at least I haven't remembered it. So I think that's a really helpful framework for developers to consider. Another number question that I wanted to ask you about was about Wishlist. So you've had Click and Conquer, which I think you've said, correct me if any of this is wrong, had about 3,000 at launch. Then
yeah.
I think Game About Feeding a Black Hole was over 30K at launch. You guys, or is that not correct?
Yeah, I think it's like 50,000.
Okay. So my question was, most people go off of what Chris Zukowski says. He's the one main marketing guy. And I think his most recent numbers are like 7,000 gets you kind of the initial, like you're in on Steam, and then 30,000 is like what you need to be whatever. I can't remember the metrics he described as, successful, but that was the number he recommended. So I know you had Click and Conquer, which was sub those numbers and had a lot of success, but now you had a game that had more than that. So just what are your instincts now comparing those and maybe adding in Mr. Farm Boy? Do you think Wishlist are actually like you have to have these, or is it a little bit more like they're kind of nice and maybe jumpstart you or something like that? How are you thinking about Wishlist now?
It depends for the individual. What I mean by that is, you want to do 3x, then these are going to become kind of mandatory, or there are indications of like whether or not to care about shipping it or not. So game is sub whatever popular up and coming. You're not going to spend any more time. You're not going to add any more content. You're just releasing it. It is what it is. You fix the minimum amount of like game crashing bugs that they come in, and you move on. Because you're not going to get the number of wish lists, you're probably unlikely to get the number of sales. It's just not going to compound. If you don't have the wish list at launch, you're unlikely to have the amount of volume and revenue to get on popular up and coming. New and trending. And then again, this is going to impact how much the game makes. You got to move on to the next idea. Now, I think those numbers are roughly right. It depends on the day, it depends on who else is launching, yada yada. But the lowest end I've seen is about 5,000 wish lists. On the worst end, I've seen about 9,000. But it really depends on who else for the popular up and coming. And I just had a call today with someone, and they're at like 3,500. They were already in Next Fest, and I said to them, like, I would wait. Like, if it looks plausible that you're going to hit 7K over some reasonable amount of time, I said between 4 to 6 months, I would wait. Like, because you're going to pull in 3 to probably 8,000 wish lists off of popular up and coming, which is for them going to double. Even if they got there with 7K, it's probably going to double their wish list. But if it's something like, I'm getting 5 wish lists a day, okay, do the math. It's going to take forever. Like, no, just ship the game. This one wasn't it. Take the lessons, move on. Don't try and just keep adding more content. Like, clearly there's an issue here. I'm the type of person that's like, it's easier to fix on probably the new thing than try and reshape whatever you got. Because you already made design decisions, now you're trying to rip out, and you already have playtesting that's based on some things, and then you're almost restarting the cycle anyways. Yeah.
Is 7K, is that popular and upcoming? I mean, ish. That's the big thing to get with that number.
But it's not as valuable as people think. Like, I could tell you for the game of Feeding Black Hole, it's like the entire time on there, and we were fortunate about our timing is like so we list on Monday, we're releasing on Monday. By mid-Thursday, we were already showing on Popular Up and Coming. The list is ordered by release date, but because there were so many few games when we were launching, as these games ticked off on Thursday, all Friday games got pulled in, and there wasn't a lot of Friday games, so the Monday games got pulled in because you don't launch on Saturday and Sunday. So we had like basically the largest possible amount of time you could be on that list ever, which was pure luck. It was not even planned that way. And I would equate it to about 8,000 wish list. And for some, that's going to be like, whoa. But when you're already going in with 50,000, you're like, okay, that's a nice bump. But this is not like some crazy number that's going to make me, secure the game. The game could still not be a great sell. And, after that, though, and also the store page has been changed, so it's not as prominent as before. And other things people should know is the Popular Up and Coming list gets hijacked during seasonal sales. So you don't necessarily want to put your release right up against those because that's going to change and then you would lose that. The new and trending is actually quite substantial if you're on there on how many more copies come from that. Probably more than the Popular Up and Coming, but you're only going to get probably on new and trending if you get Popular Up and Coming to get the revenue kind of needed to get through it. So it's all those little levers to help. I'd say sustainable game dev, these are things that you don't necessarily just strive. You start figuring out ways to consistently be getting, whether it's you kill your ideas quicker that don't get the numbers to look like they're going to be there, or you shelf it in the sense of like, it's completed, I'm going to start working on something else, and it's just going to coast and pick up the numbers, and I'll do the email content creators, and once I hit the Popular Up and Coming, that's when I'm releasing game. I think more people should try and do that strategy. It's like, if it's not a Hail Mary, like, I'm done, and literally if the game doesn't make me money, like, I'm done, then it's like, why? Like whatever. Shelf it, go get said job, or do whatever you're going to do regardless, and let the numbers build up, and then do a quote-unquote proper release, because then you're actually beyond Popular Up and Coming, and you can just wait a reasonable amount of wait. I'm not saying like I said, the numbers in 3 years I'll get there, because
Right.
there's deletions too, right? Yeah. So you have to factor out the deletions as well. How many are you adding versus the deletions?
Yeah, another thing I found really interesting in watching some of Andy's content was that you guys actually pushed back your release date. You did almost a little bit the opposite because you had such a successful Next Fest. Can you just talk about what you were looking to add in that extra month or so of development once you saw this game is definitely validated? You got the a very large number of wish lists for a small game. To what were you actually adding time to do, or to optimize, or to work on?
Sure. So we realized we had an opportunity after Next Fest, and we were still committed to the original release date of November 15th, and Next Fest was whatever, October something. And it wasn't so much the opportunity we are going to add more. It was like, I remember the meeting with Andy. We were coming close to the date, and I just said, we can't talk anymore. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, if we want to hit this date, you just have to blindly commit to whatever you're doing, and I just have to blindly commit to whatever I'm doing, because we don't have the time anymore to do back and forth feedback and adjustment. Like, we just don't have the time to make to have the minimum of the game we need to release. And we both agreed that they were valuable conversations, And that's where the opportunity came. It's like, we believe these are valuable opportunities, and we believe we have something that could roll high here as a chance. What is the date doing? It's artificial. It was literally just self-imposed.
Yeah.
There was some tweaking around, like November 15th was so we could release, so that we could enter the winter sale, because you take like a 30-day cooldown period on newly launched games. And which that was kind of a mistake anyways, because it's 30 days from the end of your launch discount. So it would have even worked anyways. We would have had an overlap. So we moved it. We moved it because, one, it was the better thing for the players, but two, also because we were just going to have to stop talking. And even then, it would have been super close. Like, we would have been stressed. He would have been crunch hours. I would have been super crunch hours. I was already pretty maxed. Andy knows this. I mean, I don't know how many listeners will know this, because I only said on one other podcast, but it's not published. Like, at this time, I was working a 40-hour dev contract, like full time, and then 40 hours on Gamedev Black Hole.
Wow.
For 4 weeks was the contract in the middle of this. And it was just like, I was pretty maxed. So it was not like, well, we'll just work hard. It was like, bro, there is no more work harder. There's 80 hours. And then I got like 2 kids, and my wife does a lot, and I love her, but like, there's small minor obligations, right? Like, oh, go help with putting on the PJs, or go to this family function, or like, there was no time for me to give. So it would have just been incredibly stressful. And Andy said that, like, he doesn't run a studio that is like prior places he worked, where it's going to be like incredibly hard like that, in terms of like, you're going to have to like crunch and be under enormous amount of stress. Like, we're willing to work hard and put in the extra time, but this is unnecessary. Like, what happens if we release a game that had a giant day 1 bug, and we tank on reviews and everyone refunds the game? I was more worried about that than the game being successful, to be quite honest. I was more worried that we were going to mess up what we possibly could have. Not that it could be this big thing that it ended up being.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Well, I'm really glad you guys were able to give yourself that buffer, just for your own mental health and for your family's sake. That's really good. Now, backing up in the timeline just a little bit, I'm really curious about your guys' demo, because I think that was probably a pretty essential part of having a successful Neckfest. And so the first thing I was curious about is that Andy mentioned in a podcast that you guys ended the demo on like a really high point, where the player is very powerful. There's a lot going on. My first question was, is that the normal flow of the game, or did you guys create a sort of custom demo that maybe ramps things up faster or has a different pacing than the base game?
So we did the demo, and it ends at the same note that the core game does end. But the core game, like today's release game, the core game for the release game today, though, takes like between, I don't know, 2 hours and 2 hours and 20 minutes. The demo takes like max 30 minutes. So there is a giant portion of the demo that came with the game, probably 80% of that demo came forward. But then the very end, where we do crazy things, where it's like, crits 100% at 25 minutes. It's like, that is going bye-bye. There's also new objects that get introduced and new abilities. So those are spaced out. At the end of the demo, they were only in the one destructive type. They hadn't even been introduced to the other 2 types in the game. So obviously we add those afterwards. There were complaints. Like, I see some of the refunds, like, the demo made the game seem different than the full game. It's like, but I don't know where you go at the end of the demo when you're absolutely literally God mode already and everything just dies. Like, players will tell you they want more of that, but once you sit them down, they're like, there's nothing to do. I'm already God. Like, everything just dies.
Yeah.
Like, so we kept 80% of it, and we had also changed some of the mechanics too. So it used to be something like a money multiplier, and people loved and hated this. They loved it because of the content creators loved it. It looked insane. People kind of hated it because it was cheeky. Like you just unlock something, it's like, oh, my money just went up like 600x. So we actually integrated that into the actual asteroid density. So they no longer unlock purely money. They just did the normal stuff of unlocking different asteroid density, which is fancy way of saying it got a different color, and those are harder to break. And when you break them, it gets more money. Okay. And the reason why it was that way in the demo was we didn't have the time, and what was it? Oh, we had coupled it. So the amount of money you get in experience was tied to the number of entities you destroyed. Okay, but if I want the demo to end with you destroying like 500,000 things in 30 seconds, that means I'm going to be having to spawn 500,000 particles in 30 seconds. And the FPS would just go to zip out, like just zero.
What a good idea.
So in the full release of the game, we're capable of doing this. Because we pulled everything out, we restructured it, we got rid of all the physics collision. There's a bunch of stuff. But we didn't have time in the demo, so I was like, cool, we'll just manipulate a money multiplier. We'll cap the number of objects that we spawn to not have the game just totally crash, and we'll have a money multiplier at the end so they're able to manipulate the money, and the experience will be separate. It worked. It got us through. The content creators loved it. They were like, what? 6,000% or whatever it was? Yeah.
That's incredible. And I already think there's a ton of wisdom for people there in the way you guys approached that demo and sort of accelerating the fun. Are there any other just broad sweeping ideas that even beyond incremental might be helpful for people with demos? I mean, did you intentionally shoot for 30 minutes for a particular reason? Or any other thoughts come to mind with demos?
Sure. 30 minutes was intentional. Mostly to keep the scope of what we're implementing short enough. And having to us, it was more important about having a really good, I think it wasn't even 30 minutes originally. I think Andy said 20 minutes. It was really important for 20 minutes than having, 15 minutes of kind of meh. So the less time meant the less mechanics, the more focus on the core things we did have, and those better be damn good. The choices we put there better be really, really good. Better really communicate to the player just how fun the game is very quickly. They need to get things through and understand the game very quickly, because we only got, like I said, originally it was 20 minutes was the plan. It just ended up happening to fit to about 30. The other things in the demo of that time is it's just enough stats to say if it's going to work or not. And what I mean is, when people come with their games to me, I always tell them, demo, the minimum playtime for 10 minutes, 80%. 80% of the players. If it's below that, I'm like, there's a problem. Either it's not a fun game, it's tutorial hell, they don't understand your mechanic, they don't understand what the store page was to the game. Like, every game I looked at that is, we'll just say a modest success or above, is 80+% on their demo for 10 minutes played. Ideally, we want higher, of course, but that's the minimum I tell people. If you can't hit that, there's something wrong.
Did you guys test that with a smaller population first to try to make sure that would happen, or did you just wing it and aim for that?
There was a bunch of testing, obviously, with each other, and then we had very couple small people that we knew tested it. Like Stefan from Click and Conquer, he tested. I think I got my wife to play when we're near the end, she did like a first playthrough that I could actually stand behind her and just stay quiet and watch. And there was a couple things where it was like, oh, that's not intuitive, or that took too long, or oh, that UI is in a weird spot. It took her too long of a time to get the mechanics. She understood it, but it took way too long. And then talking to her afterwards, being like, what did you think that meant? Or why did you do that? After that, we did a little playtest just before at IDGC, I think is the acronym. It's a game dev meetup that Andy went to, and he brought like a laptop, or they had a laptop, and people would just play. And he said he thought people would play like 5 minutes, be like, yeah, that's cool. Every single person who sat down played the entire game through for whatever it was at that point, 20, 25 minutes, and more than 5 people. And that's when we're like, even the person who was like, I don't really like incremental games, I'll play it, and like play through it. It's like, okay, we got something. It wasn't a huge play test. It was enough that we felt comfortable. We were more worried about like a bug or crashing or like the FPS tanking.
Yeah, I just think demos are incredibly important. So I was very curious about how you guys approach that. Now I want to make sure we stay within our time limits here, and I'm going to try something new for this episode. I actually polled a couple viewers and just said, Cory's coming back on the podcast. He released a game about feeding a black hole. Do you have any questions? These actually weren't in the prepared questions I sent you, so feel free to pass or shut them down or whatever. This is a total something new. So here are a couple of questions. Oh, sorry, I actually pulled up the wrong post there. Sorry, let me find the correct post. Okay, here we go. So first question is someone asking if you could talk a little bit in detail about the skill tree tool he built, like what features the tool has and how he used it for Click and Conquer and a game about feeding a black hole. Do you know what they're referencing?
Yeah, sure. I did not use the skill tree editor for Click and Conquer. Click and Conquer in Godot. We both games were Godot, but we had resources and we created each skill as a resource, and this was very painful and tedious and a lot of time. And then when I went to Andy, I was like, we need to separate. And it's like, how about I have a tool for my thing and you build game, and then we connect through JSON. The editor is nothing fancy. Up until maybe 2-3 months ago, it was pretty much unusable by anyone but myself. There was not even the UI. You just memorized the hotkeys. There was really weird things where it's like, if you activate the subtool connector in a certain way, it would glitch, but you would just know to do escape and click on another tile and then close that window, and it would like fix itself in the code. So obviously it was like, couldn't give it to anyone. Only I knew that. Like, you can't tell somebody like, if you do this and it glitches out, that's fine. Just hit escape key, open up the new tile, close the menu, and then it'll just sort itself out.
Open the window, let a little Wi-Fi out, and then it all works.
Andy at some point wanted to tinker around with like a concept he had, and he's like, look, I kind of need to use the editor. And I said, okay, give me a night. I'll least add some basic UI. So we added a basic UI, and it's taped together and held together by like ChatGPT and myself, because it was only a POC for the game when we first started. It was not even we were going to keep it. It was just to see if this would make our life easier, and then it became a real thing. Like, it's critical to the game. So now there are other games. Other people who I'm doing games with also using it. So it's expanding a bit. It's nothing that I will actually ever release, because I had people say like, oh, Gamedev will buy this. It's not worth the headache and time for me to get it to a polished state of releasing it to people.
Yeah.
The people who do use it with me, it's pretty constraint of like, they're working with me, so they know exactly what kind of progression and skill tree we're going to be building anyways. And there are some key fundamental things devs would not want, where it's like, there are no booleans. It's a float, and you must cast it on your side, because the skill tree only supports floats. It makes a broad assumption that everything we are going to touch is floats. It's like you memorize colors for tile placements and not the image, because right now it doesn't support importing the skill tree images.
This is amazing.
Like, there are things that we're changing literally this week. Like, Andy finally was like, okay, the next game, it's got to have image support. It's got to do translation, so we don't have to have all the enums in the search tool.
Yeah.
Like, there's some quality of life that's happening finally, but when we're in the game, it wasn't important. It worked, and 95% of the time it was just me using it, and it was just good enough to get us through. There was way more important things. So yeah, that's the skill tree.
That's an incredible story. That same user also was just asking if you could elaborate a little bit on the content of the emails. We detailed in our first podcast that you emailed a ton of creators to play, asking them to play a game about feeding a black hole. They were asking if you could elaborate on what the email looked like.
Yeah, they're nothing that crazy. They open with something like, just the full release one is hello. Gamedev feeding a black hole. Full game is now ready for content creators. Nearly 50,000 wishlists of the game and are waiting for its launch. Details: base game's 2 hours. Extended is another 1 to 2 hours. Additional modes are 1.5 hours. The launch date is December 15th at 10 a.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. UTC. Press kit and screenshots here as a link, and then just the key. And if you need anything, feel free to reply. And particularly for this game, I had PS dark mode can be found in setting mode because the white background, many people complained. And I had one content creator play the entire game in white mode. And like at the end, they're like, my eyes are fried because they're in a dark room streaming.
Right.
And I was like, on the YouTube, I was like, PS, there's dark mode. And they're like, oh my God, I wish I would have known that. That's it. That's literally the email. We did no embargo on the full release, nor the demo. The demo there's no reason to do the embargo. The full release, there are pros and cons. Ideal world would be everybody literally publishes their video literally the moment I click release, and all the sales happen right in that moment. But I didn't want to apply any friction to the content creators. So it was like I had made a slight suggestion to the ones who got the early access. The email I just read was everyone who got it, like, was it the day? It was the night before. So no one was going to make content the night before because the turnaround time of playing the game and recording, it was very unlikely. But the early access, there was about 25 people before that, about a week early, who got it. And I just said, look, there's no embargo. We would suggest doing it on the day of the release because that's when people are most likely to go see the game. And I think there was like 4 or 5 content creators who did it before the release date. I think Andy was a little spooked because he's like, oh, there's not going to be anyone left to cover the game when the game actually comes out. And like, then no one's going to be buying. But I knew the wish list would convert. And the biggest thing was having like a build up. And I would take the wish list and the conversion and then that converting, then the content creator is going, oh, embargo. Yeah, I'll cover the game after it releases, and then they forget, and then we never get the coverage, or the coverage is 2 weeks out. So I would rather pull it forward than not get it at all. But yeah, the ideal would be literally on the release date, the moment we click release. But we're not that big enough.
Yeah, you would be surprised what people will do just with a basic email. I mean, other than you and one other interview that I actually got my first interview with someone emailing me, but all my other guests, I just sent hundreds of emails and said, hey, I have a tiny little podcast. I like game dev. Would you come talk to me? And so, yeah, I think you could overthink it on the emails. Just send something nice and professional, and it's a numbers game at that point. Oh.
Yeah. Andy actually had Orbital Potato on his podcast, and Orbital Potato said something like, don't send me a huge novel. I don't really even want to know your game. Just like, let me click a link to go to the store page. I'll look at your screenshots, your trailers. One got you that has come up is, don't feel bad because you're not going to probably get any replies. Mm-hmm. I'll say the content creators are notorious for not replying. They will actually cover your game, fully release the video. It will do crazy well, and you won't even get a reply being like, I covered your game, or nothing. Just they don't got the time. They don't want to do that. Like,
yeah.
Yeah,
that's a good word. The next question says, what does the process look like when deciding what project to invest time in and which people to collab with? I feel like you've actually covered that a little bit in the previous conversation. Anything to add? Yeah, we'll move on. Good question, though. We did cover that a little bit. Let's see. This user watched the first interview, and he said, you felt like you were primarily driven to sell a lot of copies and be financially successful. We have talked about avoiding the artist side. It says, now that you have achieved that goal, what drives you to do more of the same?
Like, what keeps me going?
I think so. Yeah. Why now that you've maybe made it with a very successful game, what pushes you to continue to keep working in games?
It's not made it like I'm sitting on a beach, guys. We've talked about this. Even $1 million in gross sales is not $1 million in my bank account. So there's obviously pay bills. That is one thing. And me and Andy are trying to figure out things. Like, I joked with him and said, Andy, it's up to you. How many zeros do you want at the end of your bank account? Like, you want to build the big empire? I'll come build the big empire. You want to do games and that's what you want to build? Okay, we'll build games. I like the journey. I don't think I'm in game dev for like a lifestyle business to just like ship a game and that's it. There are many other facets in this industry. Yes, there's shipping games, there's publishing games, there is building tooling around other games, there's trying to disrupt the whole model of how games get distributed or even played and demoed, how games get funded. It's how much money do you have in the bank and how many moonshots do you want to take and willing to take. And again, it comes down to the individuals who are doing it. It's like, what's your thing? You want to be like, my bill is paid and I don't have to kind of worry. Cool, we can do that. You want to build, literally, I call it Empire Co. Like, not evil empire. I just we don't have a name, so it's like you want to build a grouping of things, a holding corp that does more than just build games. We can do that too. So I don't know. There's not like a peer driven thing. I just like the journey and find the challenge. I think that's the biggest thing. The challenge. When I came in here, I'd never really done games, and there's great motivation. I have a small little diary VOD, and I talk about how like some people gave me a hard time about one hit wonder and all this, and who's this person to give advice when they only have this one game. And that fueled the shit out of me, because it just made it like prove them wrong, and that was a driving force of probably one of the driving forces why this game did as well as it did, was just prove the other person wrong. Now it's less prove people wrong. It's like, okay, what's the next challenge though? It's not just build a bigger game or build the same type of games that's successful. It's like, what else can we do here? Like, do we want to try and change the whole model? I'd like to try that. So we'll see.
Yeah, thanks for answering those. Let me end you with two final questions. Also, kind of in this idea of kind of looking ahead, and I guess actually this first one kind of looks back. But with the game about feeding a black hole, what about the process are you most proud of from these past couple months of work with Andy?
Sure, I'll tell you what I'm least proud of. The name, sure. Because it's such a tongue twister.
It actually, as I was saying it, I was like, oh man, I didn't even realize that trimmed me up a little bit. It's a good name.
And the acronym's terrible.
Someone actually asked the question about the acronym, and I was like, what is this? And I was like, oh, I see it.
Yeah. Most proud of is I really maybe proud is not the word, that's more enjoyment, but it makes me proud going to Twitch streams and I get to go in there and they're playing the game and I don't hide my handle, but like nobody recognizes it. It's not like I'm like, creator Mojang or anything. Very few people, usually when they beat the game and they get the prompt like, oh, Thornity has created this series, like, wait, that's you. And just honestly ask them like, how do you like the game? What do you enjoy? Do you enjoy it? Do you not enjoy it? What would you change? Interacting with them and it being like almost a blind playthrough is incredibly joyful, and just makes me proud because I get to watch people in truth have fun. Not like, oh, it's the creator. Yeah, I'm really having fun time in the game. They have no idea who I am. And even today, I got to interact with someone and they're just having a blast and enjoying it. And then someone in their chat's like, that's the dev. And they're like, oh my God, what? um, yeah, that's the proudest thing.
Yeah, that's got to be just
The
the best feeling. Just watching people enjoy this thing you've made. That's incredible. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then, go ahead.
I was gonna say more so than the creators, because like the content creators, like they have their own hype always, so it always comes more as entertainment. But just interacting with like a more everyday person, like some of these people have like 5 viewers and they're just streaming because they're streaming. And it's just after work and they're just vibing and doing the little feeding of the asteroids and watching them get lasers and like, oh my God, lasers are OP. And it's like, exactly, lasers are OP. More lasers. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And then let me just end you with this final question. And you've sort of alluded to it a little bit already, but as you think about just maybe even in your wildest dreams, what will this success lead you to or allow you to do?
You need to have Andy on the podcast and I'd ask him.
Okay. Well, maybe he'll come back.
No, I mean, I am the type of person who I know I can't start something without someone else. A major motivation is guilt and letting down the other person. Self-motivation, I don't know if we talked about the last podcast. I'll just sit there and play League of Legends. I will accept my own demise and it won't even like weigh on me at all. Like, yep, I accept it. It is what it is. I'm playing League all day, all the time. Don't care. Once you add someone else, it's like, well, I'm letting down that person and they have the expectation and they need this to succeed or they want this to succeed. And okay, I can't just go play League for the entire day. So the next things of what to do and like what this allows to do and like what's kind of like a dream really depends on like my counterpart of what he wants to do. It comes back to the original thing that I kind of joked about. It's like, you want to keep building games or you want to build like an empire? We can go beyond building games. And we've chatted about what that would look like. And we had our 2026 first meeting of like what we're doing this year kind of. And it's like, here's if you want to go big, here's what the craziest thing I could put on a slide looks like. And it's like, it's like, what is this guy on? And then it's like, or we could just continue building games. Like, you tell me. Like, I'm down for both. So,
yep. Well, whatever those dreams, whatever those dreams end up being, either with Andy or with other folks, I wish you the best. It's been fun to be able to kind of watch the journey and have you on. And just thanks for coming back and being the first repeat guest to the Dev Dream podcast. It was a lot of fun.
Well, hopefully not the last repeat guest, and hopefully not the last time. You know, you got to ship more games, and then when those ones another success or a flop, then we can do why did this one fail compared to all the other ones, right?
Yeah, if you could have a flop, that would help me make like a great thumbnail and title. Like, this guy was he was a one-shot wonder telling us, something like that. So no, wish you only the best and absolutely open invitation. I'm sure we'll chat again.
Of course.
Thank you so much for watching this entire episode with Cory. In honor of a game about feeding a black hole, leave me your favorite space-themed emoji with no context to confuse the normies. Also, if you're looking for another dev interview and more game dev content, I think you'll enjoy this video on the screen. You're the best.